All right, last question. How should we minister to men who call themselves Christians but who show no interest in being men of God? Man, it's good stuff. And our house church, Quad, has had, unfortunately, a lot of experience in this area. We've had a lot of guys come into Brooklyn and, not be living the life that represents Christ, yet calling themselves a Christian. Wanting to come to Brooklyn for the brotherhood and the fellowship, but not necessarily wanting to take up the cross. And there's been a lot of confrontations, and it's been tough. It's been really tough. But I mean, number one, you like we talked about already, you got to be honest and you have to be truthful if you really care for them. And you just say, stop living in sin. You need to decide to obey Christ. And it's gotten to the point with multiple people in our midst that we've had to say, if you're living with your girlfriend, you're not obeying Christ, and you can't be a part of this fellowship anymore. Or their actions weren't in alignment with God's word or with their own words, and we have to call them out on that. And sometimes it's just a simple call out of them. People don't like that and they leave. But there's no shortage of people calling themselves Christians running around and not looking like it. And so we lovingly and continually speak truth. We admonish them to take up their cross, and we do it all in love, and all the way pleading for them to lay down their arms, take up the splendid cross of Christ. There's much sorrow in this process too. There's no joy that comes from telling people the way it is and not hearing from them for a while, or them falling off the face of the earth, or seeing on Facebook what they're doing with their lives after a couple weeks or whatever. It's hard. But we know, like we said in the last question, we're upholding God's word as the ultimate authority, and we're upholding Jesus and beholding him as the ultimate example, and we're following him. As kind of a story to this, an example of this, recently, a good friend of mine, through some really tough circumstances in his life, came to Christ after years of living as what he thought he was a Christian. In his own, he would tell you, he's like, I thought I was a Christian. I went to church. I believed. I did all this stuff. But I used to work at this Boy Scout camp, and I would have interaction with him every summer. And even when I wasn't working there, I'd come back for a couple days, and I'd see him, and we'd hang out. And he would later tell me, he was like, I was like the guy everybody considered like the religious zealot. They knew I was going to talk to him about Christ, or they knew I was going to bring up spiritual things or whatever, and they didn't like that. So it was kind of like the conversation everybody had together when I wasn't around or whatever. And he now that he's an actual believer and he's given his life over to Christ, he told me, even just last week, he told me this. He said, you were always there to tell me the way that it was, and I wasn't listening, but I'm listening now, and I look back and I'm like, I knew because you told me, and I'm thankful for that. Thank you for having that voice into my life, and not being a voice of judgment either, being a voice of truth, and still loving me, still wanting to hang out with me, all these things. And so it's a powerful tool. We may not see the fruit of it in the near term. So with all this stuff, we can't have a myopic view of this. It's an eternal view. And that is why we speak truth. That is why, like my friend Dwan told me, that all that story. So let's continue to be men of God, to be strong and be loving, and to have a deep conviction and compassion for the lost, so that we speak truth.